welcome back, you guys. This is Real Talk
with real siblings. How y'all doing? I'm Moses.
Sorry.
We never introduce ourselves.
We never introduce ourselves. People have no idea who we are. I'm Joy.
I'm Real, and I'm Sibling, and this is us. No, I'm Moses.
And I'm Sister Joy. And thanks for joining us. Yo, we got a lot to talk about. We are talking about Sequester season 4, episode 3.
Three.
And we got a lot to talk about. But first, you already know what to do. Look, if you are watching us, hit the like button. It's free. YouTube, they're not gonna charge you. All right, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and drop us a comment and let us know who your favorite Sequester player is so far.
Yes, you know why you need to drop a comment? Because Brent, Mr. Wolgamot himself, dropped a comment in our last video. Shout out to Brent. We now know you're watching, and we will adjust all of our speech accordingly. But I just want to say Brent's the dopest. Unrelated to his comment, he's the best player in the entire game. He's my favorite player. He's always been my favorite player, and he should be everybody's favorite player. That's all I got.
Look, he's been my favorite player since the very first video, so go back and watch.
I actually have liked him, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was super. It kind of stands when I saw that he commented. I was like, okay.
Where are the rest of you? Muna, Jacob. Anyway.
We have a lot to talk about tonight, including a lot of things to say about Brent, honey. We'll get there. But first, at the top of the show, top of the episode, we see Natalie make her way back, right? Natalie's back in the game.
Natalie or Rachel or Sabrina.
I almost said Katie.
One of them is back. I almost said Katie. She's back. The girl who beat the other girl in competition is back. She went to the luxury room, the room where Josh had previously won his LOS. There's only one remaining of the 2 envelopes. She chose the wrong one. She did not get an LOS. All you Natalie or Rachel stands out there, sorry. Your girl, whatever her name is, didn't get one.
Yeah, but she's back, and she comes running back in the house, and everyone's like, cheer, yeah, you're back. And she's like, wait, let me say something. And I think she rehearsed this because it kind of rhymed. All right, Natalie. Okay, you prepared it. She's like, before you give me that BS or whatever, since it's obviously they voted her out and now they're cheering that she's back. And, she's I didn't write down what she said, but I remember it rhymed, and I was like, okay, that was cute.
Now that I'm alive, I'm prepared to survive. Some grade school kind of thing.
Said that, I would have clapped for her, but anyway, something similar. And I was like, okay, so Natalie's back, and then they immediately announced the next twist. And I have to say, I really thoroughly enjoyed this twist. I loved it. It's been my favorite twist so far. And I know it's only episode 3, but it was really cool. It's called Majority Rules. And you want to tell us everybody about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree. It was probably my favorite twist so far. So the way it worked is the house had to vote on somebody. In a way, it's kind of simple and elegant, right? The house has to vote on someone. However, whatever the majority votes, the goal is to get the majority to vote together. That person that the majority votes will be the person nominated for eviction. Whatever in that, right?
Wait, no. It wasn't one person. So the way to
I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna edit, cut. Okay. Act 2, take 3. So the game was called Majority Rules, and the way it worked was SequesterBot asked the house a question. Right. In this case, the question was, who is most likely to poison the jury if they go to jury? The house has to agree on an answer. However, if the majority of the house agrees on an answer, everyone who isn't in that majority is now eligible for eviction. If everyone in the house agrees on the answer, as in it's unanimous, they'll spin the wheel of misfortune, which apparently has every house guest name on it. And whichever house guest it lands on is the one who will have to go compete to stay in the house. Automatically. So it created a fascinating dynamic of people forming these little globs of majority, picking what they were going to say, picking what they were going to tell everybody else they were going to say that was fake, and then dispersing into the house and then forming another different glob that would do the same thing over and over and over and over and over. It was wild.
It was super cool. And then I liked it still placed some power into the hands of the people who were part of the minority answer, because if you're part of the minority answer, yes, you're up for eviction, but now the person, you have to choose someone from the majority answer to battle. So people in both groups were at risk to some degree.
Yeah. What was the first group? There was that first big group in that room that formed.
Yeah. So immediately, I mean, they apparently they only have 10 minutes to like have all of this discussion.
Damn. Yeah.
All of this discussion happens in 10 minutes. So the 10-minute mark hits and you see everyone just like scramble to go into different rooms. I think Brendan talked about just wanting to get into any room with the majority, although I think a lot of people kind of said that like, you just want to be with as many people as possible, which is probably like one of the best like strategies going into this.
Yeah.
And so the first group of people we see go into room are Billy, Spencer, Marcelo, Josh, Brent, Muna, and Brandon. They all get into a room and they're like, oh, we have 7 people. Perfect. We already have the majority right here. And I mean, this is again, very first group within like the first 30 seconds. And they're like, okay, here, the real answer is going to be Josh. Josh's name, Josh volunteered. He's like, pick me. He's like, all right, fine. Josh is going to be the real answer, the real majority answer. But when you go out, tell them that Brent is the answer. So Brent becomes the fake name. Brent becomes the minority, the name that's going to be for like the minority group that they're peddling out there to push the people. So they all agree. And Muna's like, yo, this is, let's put our hands in, 1, 2, 3, go team. And that's what they decide to do.
However, as you can immediately imagine, everyone that left that room then went on to the same thing in the next room they went into. We had another group that formed. They said they would agree on, I don't remember who was second. There were so many recombinations that happened, but they would just go from group, room to room to room. Eventually, at some point, there's a room of 7 or 8. There's only 11 people in the house left, so 7 or 8, really 6 is a majority. So there's a few of them in a room, and they decide, okay, for real, this time, it's going to be Rachel. We're all going to vote Rachel.
And it makes sense that that's going to happen because in that very first room, not everybody's alliance members were there, right? So I don't remember who it was that was mentioning that, like, Rachel's not in here. I think it was Billy. Billy's like, Rachel's not in here. That's my girl. Sharina's not in here. That's my girl. And like Muna's in there, but she's close to Jacob, and Jacob wasn't there. So they had people that they wanted to kind of bring with them and have them be part of it, and they weren't there. So it kind of made sense that it was all going to fall apart, and it was super fascinating to watch. And so then, we get to this, group of 8, and this is towards the end, which makes sense in terms of that's when the final decision is going to be made, because throughout the whole time you see pockets of people and different pockets of, 2 to 3 people, 4 to 5 people. And so now we get 8 people in a room, and that's Rachel, Billy, Brandon, Jacob, Shireen, Muna, Natalie, and Josh.
Yeah.
And
they agreed to Rachel.
They agreed. Rachel's real name.
Yes. And the 3 people that were not in the room at different points came into the room. Right. That's when it was Brent, Marcelo, and Spencer who were not in the room for that discussion. At some points they came in, the group would tell them a name or just kind of stall. At one point it was Spencer went to go talk with Josh, right? And Josh just like stalled by talking about Natalie and Katie's eviction and how he voted. That was really smart and really quick thinking.
Perfect.
Yeah, he just stalled and rambled and made promises and never really got to talking about what the name was that they agreed on. And at one point, Brent makes a move that I thought was pretty clever where I think he was at the time, mind you, remember, Brent is the best player to ever play this game. Objectively, he's the best. I remember he was talking to Jacob, and Brent had heard in a different room. The last person they'd agreed on was Josh, right? And so he was trying to fill in Jacob, like, look, if you don't know that it's Josh, I'm telling you now, and whoever hasn't told you that is not necessarily looking out for you. And it sounded like Jacob.
He mentions,
Yes. And he mentions Muna, right? Because Jacob was thinking, like, why didn't Muna tell me this? Because I think Brent had mentioned Muna was in on that discussion. And Jacob was like, why didn't Muna tell me this? What do I believe? I think that was a smart play by Brent. I don't know. It's hard to know what they fully understood. Realizing this was in 10 minutes is crazy. I don't know how the editing worked or what they knew at different points. But Brent, again, the genius, he managed to, it seemed like convince Jacob for a bit, like, I need to figure out what's going on because Muna might have lied to me. And then he does figure out what's going on. He does end up being part of the 8. So the 8 vote together, and they vote Rachel.
They vote Rachel. And we see Brent and Marcelo and Spencer vote how that first initial group, right? That first group of 7, how they decided the vote should be, which was they said that the real name was going to be Josh, right? So Brent, Marcelo, and Spencer, they vote for Josh, and they're in the minority group. And now's where the fun begins. Like, I really enjoyed this scramble to see who, was going to be the vote. And one of the things we see, so now they have, like, the majority, I guess, have, I don't know how much they have, but they have a certain amount of time to vote out one of those three, whether it's Spencer, Brent, or Marcelo. You see like 5 people rush in a room with Marcelo, and they're like, we're not voting you out. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe.
It was most of the girls, right? It was Billy, Muna, Shireen, I think, was in there.
Yeah, and I think Brendan was in there too.
Yeah.
He's like the one guy in there. And then we see Marcelo just like, he's just trying to act really like, oh, I need you guys. But like, in my head, I was like, I wonder what he's thinking, because like they're all talking to him at once, trying to reassure him. Mm-hmm. And I would hope that was reassuring to him, because they went to him first. It was very clear, like they all went to him first, and they're all like, you're not the target. We all love you. Da, da, da. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, Marcelo.
On the other hand, he might have thought like I don't think he did. He could be like, they're damn for sure. Why are they putting this much effort into calming me down before the vote, unless they're going to vote?
Yeah. But if you're Brent, you're like, why aren't they rushing to come talk to me? You got Marcelo. What about me? I'm not trying.
Right? We're all here. Yeah, that part was wild. It was really wild. And so, I mean, after that initial rush to Marcelo, then it became this war when everyone kind of understood it was between Brent and Spencer. And it became this really back and forth, I think, a really strategic. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with everyone's strategy, but I think they were clearly really had a clear strategy going into it, where they're trying to get people to one side or the other, right? Spencer or the greatest of all time, genius player Brent. And it was amazing to see. I think Brent made a lot of smart plays. Spencer was kind of going with this strategy of like, if I go up, I'm going to compete, and whoever has to compete against me is going to lose. I don't really understand what everyone in the house is so afraid of. Maybe
the whole house is scared of him, and it's very strange, because they're like, oh, he's a physical beast, he's a comp beast, like, they're kind of like touting him as this like just dominant physical player, like the next coming of The Rock, who's just gonna crush him. And I'm looking at him like, Brent looks like he has more muscle than him. Like, Brandon could probably take him.
Jay West was definitely more muscular than him.
I'm sure Shireen could probably beat him in a freaking arm wrestling competition. Like, what's the hype? I didn't see it.
I don't understand it. He doesn't look. I mean, maybe he's tall, so maybe he's a basketball player. Maybe that's the idea. But he doesn't look like an athlete. Like Christmas from Big Brother would run circles around this man. Like, he doesn't look like an athlete. So I didn't really understand this physical threat thing. Also, I thought Brent made a great point that nobody ever makes on Big Brother, that people always should. The competitions are gender neutral for the most part. Like, they're not designed for big athletic dudes. So who cares if he's big and athletic? It makes no sense. The competition before this one was beer pong, which, I mean, I don't know what muscles or athleticism does for you there. The one before that was a puzzle. What do you mean? Then Spencer was saying, like, it's time for a physical class. Like, you think they're going to have you play football? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Your bare hand.
Like, I don't. Yeah, I really didn't understand that whole thing at all.
I thought, objectively and actually honestly, I thought Brent played this perfectly, because I think Brent had a few different strategies and a few different tactics going in and talking to different people, and he wasn't just like, oh, vote for Spencer, vote for just, I mean, obviously he was like, vote for Spencer, but he wasn't just like, only vote for Spencer because we got to get him out sooner rather than later. Like, he had some nuances to some of his arguments, whereas I think Spencer really was just, I think he was trying to really lean into that. Okay, like, I'm big and scary. You don't want to throw me in there. I'm gonna destroy all of you guys. And like, that's kind of all he did. He didn't really do a lot to try to maybe build some inroads with people and build some bridges and that sort of thing, or even do what Josh did, which is like threaten. When Josh threatened Brent, he threatened like a very important, person. And it would have been nice to maybe see him go to Jacob or someone like that and say, yo, I'm gonna draw you in, and Jacob's gonna get Marcelo and Luna on his side, and they're gonna get their people. He just was like, you don't want to go against me. I can get in. I can pick anybody. I'll smash everybody. It's like, okay, but you see Brent, and Brent kind of says like, look, I love the fact that he said, yeah, it's gender neutral. Like, what do you it's gender neutral, so don't worry about that. And number two, if you don't get him out now, like, okay, in 2 days you try to get him out, there's going to be less people. You're more likely to get picked, and he's going to defeat that weak person, come back, and then defeat you, and it's,
He also, I thought he had a really good multifaceted approach. Different people who was kind of saying different things. He talked about how, like, he's good for ratings. That didn't necessarily work well for some people, but I don't think it's a bad argument. You just got to give it to the right person of like, I deserve to be here. People say that on Big Brother all the time. Like, I tried, I deserve to be here, and I don't understand what they mean. But the idea that like, you know, like, yeah, I'm here to make drama. I'm here to bring eyes. Like, you can vote me out on week 6. Like, I'm not going to win anything. I think that was a good approach.
I think that's what he probably said. I think that's what he was trying to say. Now that you say it, that makes sense. I didn't like the way they edited it because it did make it seem like he was like, look, like, you got to keep me. I'm the ratings. And I don't think that's what he was trying to say.
He is. We are only watching because of Brent. Everybody's only watching because of Brent. This is actually the Brent show. It's called Brent Quester. I'm going to shill hard. I'm trying.
Oh, but what he was trying, and he did say, he was like, look, you can get me out anytime. There's no expiration date on when you can get me out. You can get me day after that, day after that. You know what I'm saying? Like, keep me here. I'm here for the drama. Like, you can get me out whenever. But Spencer, like, there's some expediency as to when you need to get him out. You got to do that sooner rather than later. And I thought that was good.
I think the only mistake Brent made, it's not a mistake on him. I'm sure production was somehow screwing over his game because he doesn't make mistakes. But like, I think what happened was he didn't necessarily target his message to the right people all the time. Like, Shireen could be played more emotionally. Then again, I don't know how much of that we saw, but like, Shireen could be played more emotionally. Like, different people have different buttons that need to be pushed. And it seemed like sometimes he used the wrong approach for the wrong person. But the idea of having a different approach is important. And Spencer was very much the opposite of that. So going into the voting, that's kind of where we're at. Half the house was like, we should vote out Spencer. He's a threat. And he also had pissed off Muna. They had an argument, and Muna was very much against him. And then half the house was like, we don't want to piss off Spencer. We want to go after Brent.
Yeah. Another thing Brent did, which, you know, I don't want to hurt too much of Brent, but like, I really enjoyed this part. And you're right. It was a war. It was very clear, Spencer versus Brent. And they were both out there working. I just thought Brent worked harder. One of the things I really liked that he did, and it works because he had planted a seed earlier when he was telling Spencer, like, yo, Muna is pushing hard. No, sorry. When he was telling Spencer, Rachel is pushing hard for you. Rachel is pushing hard. Rachel is pushing hard. Right. And maybe that was like more kind of Brent planting a seed in his own head. But now, you know, with that final, okay, we have to, I think it was like just a few minutes left and they had to decide it was still 50-50 Brent or Spencer. Brent gets in a room with Muna, and, you know, Muna's like, well, I don't really know. I mean, I don't want to bring up Spencer. He's going to pull me. And Brent's like, oh no, he's not taking you. He's taking Rachel. And I thought he did that so effectively because usually Brent's heavy-handed. Brent is forceful. You know, he's aggressive, he's assertive, and he's in your face. I actually thought the fact that he did that so just in a laid-back kind of manner, like, oh no, he's taking in Rachel, and then he kind of told everybody that, like, he didn't beat them over the head with it. Like, I think that, to me, from what at least we saw, to me, that's what made the difference in terms of them voting in Spencer. Because I think that was enough to convince Muna of like, okay, maybe he's not taking me. I guess he's probably taking Rachel.
That's a very
good point. Let me vote for Spencer.
That's a very good point. Typical Brent doing typical Brent genius moves. You know how it is. And that, I mean, spoiler alert, that's what happened, right? The House voted for Spencer. It was a vote. I think there were 7 people that voted for Spencer when they revealed 7 or seven. There was 3 people that voted for Brent, and then one person, Billy, is dope. Billy's dope. So Billy went to Marcella beforehand, and she said, I know nobody's voting for you. Let me vote for you so I don't have to piss anybody off. And she really convinced him it was a good play, and she did it. It was smart.
It was so great. It was like,
I'm really enjoying her character and her gameplay and everything about her.
I mean, they didn't really show too much of how she knew that her vote would be revealed, but she knew it. She picked up on it somehow. She knew it. She played it perfectly. She went to Marcelo. And of course, you know, Marcelo's good. Of course, he's going to say, you know, it's like, all right, fine. And of course, you see in his interview, his diary room session, he's like, you know, I'm going to use that as, you know, I'm going to hold that over your head. I'm going to charge some interest, which is fine.
For sure.
But still, the fact that she told him beforehand, it was so well done. And then you see her vote get called out, and she votes Marcelo. It's just like,
It's smart. Perfect. And it's the kind of gameplay people often ignore. And I think Sequester forces you to be aware of it a little more. But just because you don't have the power and just because you're not the target doesn't mean you shouldn't be playing, right? Yeah. You need to be playing at all times because there's always advantages you can get and disadvantages you can avoid. I think she's great at that. And so, so Spencer is eliminated. He has to pick one person, and this is when it gets very fun. He calls out Jacob's vote. Jacob voted for Spencer. So you would think Spencer's going to go after Jacob, but Spencer probably don't want that smoke. And to be fair, it's good strategy. You shouldn't necessarily go after somebody who you think is more competitive. So he goes after the person who Brent had already told him. Other people had already mentioned it, like, right? At that point, Muna's name had been dropped by a few people.
I mean, Muna and Spencer have been really at each other since the first episode. Yeah. And it makes sense. At like every episode, Spencer is in trouble. You know, the first 3, he's been in trouble with some regard. He goes to Muna for help. Muna votes against him. Mm-hmm. And then the next episode, Muna's like, okay, let me talk. And Spencer's like, yo, you just went against me. Like, let me go and make my case for people who are actually going to listen to my case.
Right.
Like, I already know you're a lost cause. And then we saw that again. Yeah. And like, I totally understood where Spencer was coming from. It's like, Muna, we know there is no way in heck you're going to vote for Spencer to stay. That we know that's not going to happen. So like, stop wasting Spencer's time to try to chat with him. And Spencer just got very annoyed when she tried to talk to him early in the round to try to say, oh, I'm not, I want to work with you, blah, blah. And he was just like, he was like, shame on me, shame on you, fool me once, fool me twice, leave me alone. And then he got all upset about that. Yeah. So, fast forward to picking someone for the battle, and of course he picks Muna, and Muna,
she ain't happy. She was not happy. I thought, I mentioned this to you before, like, there's an element of it I think is slightly performative that I'm like, I get it, we're on TV or whatever, internet. But in general, I find the confrontations after the selections very genuine. I really enjoy it. And I don't understand why it doesn't happen as much in Survivor or Big Brother, where, if somebody tries to get you out, you hate them. They are your enemy. They are trying to steal food out of the mouths of your children, or whatever you want to like conceptualize. Like, they are the enemy. And I really like how Muna came at him. She was like, I don't understand when people say it's a weak move to target. If you believe you're a strong player, it should never be a weak move to target you. But she was like, it's a weak move. Jacob was openly against you, like, blah, blah, blah. She really argued her case. It was irrelevant, but she argued her case, and she was pissed, and she let everyone know she was pissed. I think that was cool.
Yeah. It was funny because, she mentions Jacob. She's like, she's like, Spencer, and I know, and that I know that that I'm not one of your allies. I'm not going to, of course I'm going to vote you out. So like, me voting you out is not a surprise. You have Jacob over here who you thought you had his vote. He backstabbed you. He double-crossed you. Like, why aren't you taking him in? And which is a good argument. It doesn't matter because, Spencer still wants to take you. But that was cool to see because she starts throwing out Jacob's name. And Jacob's like, oh.
Yeah, he wasn't happy.
And they're all like, and I was like, oh.
And I liked how Spencer conducted himself in that situation. I don't think he generally is always like very aware of the moment when he acts, which makes sense, right? It's just tough to always be aware of the context. But I think at that moment he understood. Muna called him out on being like, she said, I'm not going to let men talk down to me. And I saw Billy in the back like, yeah. I was like, really relax. You've been playing the things very carefully. Don't implicate yourself. But like, whatever, regardless of how you feel about it, it's a valid thing to say. It's valid how she felt, and she said it. And there was a moment where Spencer was like, let me back down a little. Because before he was like, you interrupted me. Like, I'm trying to explain why I picked you. You're interrupting me, yelling at me. And then when she said that, he's like, okay, let me, this is more important than just the game. This is a moment. Like, let me step back a bit. At least how it was edited. And I thought that was, if that's how it was in real time, I thought it was very astute on his part to be like, this isn't the hill I need to die on. It wouldn't look good for him.
That's a good point. You're right. That's a really good point, actually. And yeah, that's a good point because she, I was kind of surprised with her saying that. And obviously I think it wasn't maybe based just on how he called her out in that moment. I think it was kind of based on the history of their relationship so far in the game. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you did see him try to kind of push back a little bit. And then he's like, I'm gonna just be quiet. I'm gonna let you have this one. Yeah. I'll be quiet. I'm still gonna battle you, but I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah. And battle, they did. They fought. It
wasn't the physical rock competition that everybody was afraid about. It was not that.
It was not. It was a matching game. And so the way it worked is they had pictures of previous Sequester competitors, house guests, and they essentially had to take a little picture of a house guest. There was Velcro on the back, and they would stick it to the flag sheet with Velcro, and they would turn it face down. They would do that to about like 14 maybe or so different pictures, so probably like 7 people that they're matching. And they would have to arrange it, configure it, so that the other person had to go, and then one by one, the person would try to match it. So they'd flip one card. If they matched, You win. If you don't match, you turn them back over. The other person goes, right? They will take turns, and whoever matched all the pairs first is like 7 or so. I think it was 7 pairs. That person was the winner. There was also one blank card, so that if you turn it over, it just kind of wastes your turn because you can't match it and it delays you.
It was really cool. I liked it. I liked that each competitor got to scramble and place the pictures for the other person. I thought that was really cool. I also liked that they got to do it alternating, you know, and so, and I don't, maybe they do that. I don't know if that's a better to, you know, for editing or whatever, but I liked it. I liked that one person had to go and then they had to wait and then the other person gets to go. And that kind of like builds that sort of suspense and competition, that heat, because you see them as they're doing it. And then you're like, shoot, I got to catch up, versus 2 people, you know, probably Big Brother style, where it's like 2 people go into a room, you know, at separate times. And then at the end, you just find out what their time is. So it was cool. They were both good. I mean, I don't think, they both had strategies as to how they, you know, arranged the faces and, you know, kind of how they thought the other person might think when they're like uncovering and, you know, which areas they might go for. I thought both their strategies were fine. They both were good. And it just kind of came down to just Spencer had an edge. You know, Spencer just had an edge. And I think maybe it was like, was it 5-7, 7-5 that he beats her? I'm not sure, but Spencer wins.
Yeah, and it was, you know, with all that talk about physical competition, I don't know what this really revealed, if anything. I felt a little bad for Muna, a little bit, just because I can't hold a double standard. I did not feel bad for Jay West when he talked all that trash and lost. Muna was talking.
No, that's different. Jay West was talking trash. Got called out. Muna wasn't saying anything.
That's true. That's true. But then after he called her out, she was like, "Oh, I'm about to destroy. I'm not the one." And I was like, I mean, you have to be.
You gotta look to your left, look to the right before you cross the street. You better make sure that pedestrian sign is flashing.
She said that. I was like, chill. You better go in there and smoke this. Also, I'm a writer. I know poets. She won't win that competition. I mean, on the one hand, it's a memory competition. She's a spoken word poet. She memorizes things a lot. On the other hand, it's a visual memory competition. It's not words. It's not verbal. You're not memorizing a list or letters. So I don't think she would have had an edge. On the third hand, in my experience, most creatives are good at what they do and not other things, right? I mean, being a poet or being a creative isn't that lucrative. If you can make a ton of money doing something else, you do that and then do your other thing on the side until you're good at it. But a lot of people, you put your effort into it because that's what you're good at. And when he picked her, I was like, he's probably going to beat her at almost anything. but she put up a very good fight. I mean, she did very well. So
she put up a very good fight. She definitely didn't get like, you know, trounced like Katie did. Like Katie was like, what?
That's true. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, kind of like what we saw with Josh a little bit, I think Spencer is going to come back in this house and his threat level is going to be even higher. Yeah. But I think people are going to be even more scared to challenge him because they still see him as this like physical comp beast, the second coming of The Rock. Okay. And now they're going to be like, and he can dominate us in mental competitions, you know? So, and he's probably going to lean into that because I think that's kind of, he doesn't have enough allies to do otherwise.
True.
And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that's going to make people want to take more shots at him. Maybe now that the door's open, it's like, all right, let's just keep calling Spencer in and we got to take him out at some point. Or if they're going to be so afraid of him and leave him alone because now they think, well, he's going to beat me in a physical competition and mental competition.
Do the other competitors watch the competition? I feel like
they did in
they did one
first
of them, right?
Or at least certainly in the first. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure actually.
I feel like they watched the first one, and I feel like they didn't watch the second one.
They don't watch because they don't know when the.
I mean, running in. Spencer should come back in and be like, "Yeah, we had a spoken word contest, and I destroyed her." Like that's, I mean, right? Like if he wants to build himself up as a comp beast, he should just lie. Like it was a verbal IQ reasoning test, and I'm better verbally than she is.
He should hype it up. He should. I mean, I don't know how. He should absolutely. Like, yo, that was the hardest mental competition I've ever seen on this. Like, he needs to hype it up so that people are just like, oh my gosh, let's just give him the money and leave. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that was it. It was very interesting. It was really interesting. I think Billy's in a good place. I think Josh is still in a good place.
Yeah.
I think Brent's in an interesting place. You know, I think the way he wiggled his way out of this nomination was
interesting. Really, you're talking about the GOAT, greatest of all time, Brent Wolgamott. You're saying he's in an interesting place. I'm sorry. Did you not see the comment he left on our page? This man is obviously going to win. It ain't no competition. He's going to personally beat everybody. He's going to go every week and eliminate every other person. I think that's my prediction for us this season.
Look, Brent, we love you on this channel. So after the season ends, we're inviting you. Please do.
That'd be lit. That'd actually be really fun.
We would love to do an after show recap with you. It would be awesome. Like, it would be so awesome. But yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting to kind of see. I think there's a lot of people laying low. You know, there's a lot of people. I think like Shireen, I don't think she's really on anybody's radar. Rachel, you know, we kind of have like Rachel versus Brent a little bit, but Rachel's so far not on Brent's radar, at least from what we've seen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people laying low, and really so far only the obvious threat levels of like Brent and Spencer, and maybe a little bit of Jacob, and a tiny bit of Josh. So I'm excited for next week.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I've liked a lot of the twists so far. I'm hoping they'll deliver next week.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. But yo, we want to hear from you. Okay, if you made it this far, thanks for being a fan. Hit that subscribe button, but also drop us a comment. Like we want to discuss. We want to engage. Let us know, who do you think is playing a good game? Who are your picks? Like, who do you think is gonna make it all the way to the end? And what are you liking or not liking about the season? Let us know, and we'll answer your questions in the next video, as well as bringing you all the recap on what happens on episode 4.
All right, y'all.
That's it.